to tell you, man, you know, I don't play an intellectual character, and he's actually a bit nastier than you would ever expect either. And a really good director.
Stupid, okay.
No, he's not at all, and a really good director. One of their best, actually. Yeah.
And Torchwood, yes. You got it all going on. You know, Ron, can you talk a little bit about the female characters? Because I think that's kind of an interesting thing. Why is it that you think that on this show and the previous show in this universe, the women have resonated so much?
I don't know, honestly. I mean, I was sort of always interested in writing female characters in sort of non-traditional military roles, dating back to my years at Star Trek, where I liked, you know, casting female Starfleet captains and putting them in interesting places. And you know, when we were developing Galactica at the miniseries, it was apparent from looking at the old show that, you know, they didn't really utilize the female characters that strongly. And here was an opportunity to sort of say, okay, if Starbuck's going to be a woman, then what does that say about the society? What does that say about this military? And it was a short step from there to say, yeah, and if there's going to be a president, maybe it's a woman too. And okay, now we're starting to get a lot of really interesting female characters, and then we have number 6, and everything just sort of, one thing would always lead to another, and the joke around the set of Galactica was that all the females like saved the show every week, and the guys stood around and watched them, which didn't make Jamie Bamber too happy at times, but it was like true. I mean, it was like the female roles at Galactica had just the best things to do in the series time and again, and it was just more fun to write for them for whatever reason. It became a joy to sort of do something different, especially in the science fiction genre, which I had this sort of prejudice that, you know, sci-fi and fantasy had gotten to a place where if you put a female character in a movie, you basically had to put them in leather, and they had to kick people in the head with stilettos. And beyond that, they didn't really have a role to play. And I thought, well, you know, that doesn't make any sense. So what kind of a world is that? And it just became one of our hallmarks to just keep writing female characters and make them three-dimensional and make them as interesting as we could.
And there was also the matter of, you know, when Ron first told me about the idea of Starbuck as a woman, I thought, oh, that's, you know, that's interesting, okay. And then he said, you know, and rather than just having this commander, Adama, we'll have this, you know, second half of the, you know, leadership will be embodied by a female in charge. And I thought, oh, that's interesting. So we got a lot of women in charge. And then Ron said, yeah, and I want all the men to have to call them sir. I said, Ron, is this really just about empowering women, or is some reason why you really want the men to call the women sir?
And this time around, they all have to be 16.
Yeah, exactly. Those records have been sealed.
What about, you know, September 11th was such a big part of Battlestar. It was woven into the fabric of it. It was hard to watch the show and not think about all the things that happened after that day. This show seems to have different things that it's tapped into. What are some of the, I mean, as far as corporations and industry and ethics? Can you two talk about what you did going past the September 11th influence?
Well, we said, you know, Caprica is us today. You know, Galactica was sort of us in the post-9/11 world, you know, writ large, taking it to the next step and saying, okay, what if the entire civilization had been wiped out and there was only this course? We kept saying, what if we did a show where it was just the people inside the World Trade Center that had survived and everyone else was dead? And that was sort of the hallmark for Galactica. And then for Caprica, we said, well, this is a society much closer to ours now in many ways. We're going to deal with corporate intrigue, we're going to deal with politics, we're going to deal with sort of society and class and the immigrant experience, and it's going to be much more recognizable as sort of the world that we live in right now. And so we were at pains to sort of try to give as many familiar sort of touchstones to the world on Caprica as we could. And yet, it's sort of like saying we're doing a show that's now inside the World Trade Center in the years leading up to 9/11. So it always has this sort of cloud, there's this foreshadowing, you always know that all these people are doomed, this society is doomed, it's all going to come to a really ugly, messy end, and none of them are aware of it. And I thought that's an interesting tension that should underlay the entire show.
You know, for the actors on the panel, I always think it's interesting to talk to actors about when they first take on a character, they think it's a certain thing, and then as the character goes along and grows and surprises them, they find it might not be what they first thought it was. You know, it's just the difference, the odyssey of the character. Maybe if you guys could talk a little bit about when you took the role, what you thought it was, and if it's changed, and if it hasn't, that's fine. But is there any surprises there, James?
Yeah, I was surprised about how much love there was in the character. I was directed to really be a loving Methodist priest. You know, my dad was a Methodist priest, and so I knew a bunch of priests, and you know, I came in going, okay, I'm going to be the villain again, you know, and I really was told to really open up other doors, and I think that was somehow the creepy came in when that happened. So yeah, for me it was the love. Yeah.
For me it was the gay, I think. That came as a bit of a surprise, but a pleasant one, mind you, because I think it actually ended up making the character much more layered and much more interesting, and certainly has a very interesting message, or you know, a take on a world where that isn't a stigma, that isn't an issue, and how we function in a world like that. So that's an interesting layer as well. It's not the mobster you think it is. You know, he's a loving uncle. He's a family man. He's a devoted, you know, he's a devoted member of his community, and it's fascinating to see this dichotomy play out, where all of a sudden this character ostensibly is the worst guy in the cast turns out to be quite lovable at times, I think.
I think for me, when I went in for it originally, I thought it was supposed to be, oh, rebellious rich teen, and she creates an avatar of herself, and I wasn't aware of how many different Zoes would come out of it. Especially after the pilot, doing the robot, being in that body and having to stand still and just be able to work with my eyes, and that's my form of communication. I would not have ever thought I would be doing that, and those are some of my favorite scenes, because, you know, I can't speak, so my emotion literally is in my eyes, you know, and it was really rough and terrible working with Eric and Paula, because it was so heartbreaking seeing them talk so poorly about their daughter, and she's standing right there and she can't scream or say anything about it. So that was something that I didn't expect to be doing.
Not to mention the fact that in the second half of season 1, you do get to kick people's asses in leather and stilettos.
Right. That.
And you said you're going to be wearing less clothes more often, right?
Yeah. So, seems to be what I'm good at, so.
Maggie, what about the character?
Well, when I read the pilot, I just remember thinking that Lacey seemed a little undefined, and where did she fit into the script? And that's actually what I realized. It kind of clicked, and I realized that was actually her whole part in the world of Caprica. Is she is undefined. She's still being molded, and I've just kind of gone with her to figure that out, and it's been really interesting.
Yeah, we're going to get ready to take some questions from the audience, and if I could ask you guys to not make proposals, pitches, don't threaten anybody, please make sure everything ends in a question mark. You can start lining up there, and while you guys are doing that, you know, Ron and David, one of the things that happened with Battlestar is this great story arc, and it wraps up, there's beginning, middle, and end. Do you guys have a sense of the end game of Caprica when it arrives? Do you know where we're going?
No, you know, we're holding that out for now. In the first season of Galactica, I couldn't have told you how long it was going to go or where we were going. I mean, I knew sort of what the ending was going to be in general, because they were going to, you know, it was baked into the show that they were going to get to Earth one way or another, and it was going to be something. With Caprica, you can look ahead between where Caprica is right now and the beginning of the Battlestar miniseries, and there's at least a half dozen points along that historical timeline that I could see this show ending. And I think we have to just sort of get into the second season and, you know, potentially the third, and sort of feel what the rhythm of the show is and what's going to be the natural place to end this part of the story. And right now, I think we're just open, and we'll just see what happens.
And we'd also like to announce that we have a third season order for Caprica.
Yeah, we don't have the second. But in a very unusual move, they're going to order the third. It's a bold new strategy from sci-fi.
I'm just glad to hear that Battlestar was baked. I had no idea that Battlestar was baked. Half baked, full baked. All right, so let's take some questions from the audience.